Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the Kindle Award-winning novel for Best Horror of 2020, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as the Hotel series and Pretty Ugly. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, Allison Martine, author of The Bourbon Books, which includes the award-winning novel Dibs, Since September, Move On Melinda, and the most recently released Climbing the Salmon Ladder. Thank you, Allison. I know, I get so excited to say it. With us today is one of our favorite people ever, especially this week. Is Paul Tremblay, author of the upcoming Pallbearers Club, as well as Head Full of Ghosts, Cabin at the End of the World, and a million other things. He's won every award. You have Bram Stoker, British Fantasy. More than that.
I'll take it.
Those are the two big ones.
If there are others, you probably have won them, and we just don't know.
We don't know it, or we do know it, and we're just trying not to be like, Paul, you've won everything.
Yeah.
So fancy. So, Paul, welcome to our punk rock edition of Vox Vomitus, our 80s punk version of where...
We're doing it right.
Are we doing it right? I'm cosplaying as Paul's character Mercy in Pallbearers Club. Paul is cosplaying as Art Barbara.
Yeah, Art myself.
It's not hard.
Yeah, Art wears this jacket for a little while. Although I was half planning, as I lean out, I was half planning a costume change, but I think I can't get up and change coats without knocking wires down. But here's an old jean jacket.
Nice.
It's a friend of mine, Jed Shepard. Very nice, Jed. Yeah, he wrote the screenplay for the movie Host. Super nice guy. He knows I'm a big Jaws fan, so he bought this in England for me and sent it to me. It says Jaws.
Nice.
And then the back of the jacket here's where you go like full.
Silk screened on. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway,
as a fellow Jaws fan, embarrassing story for me. In high school, we had to do a completely non-verbal theater performance. It could only have music, and I chose the theme of Jaws, and the scene that we wrote required me to run across the stage, which of course I did fall down. Everyone laughed. I had to pretend it was part of it.
Yeah.
But I still love Jaws.
To be the boat, the shark, the person.
Wow.
I was
like supposed to be the boat.
I was the shark character, but it was superimposed on a pantomime. Oh gosh, I should stop talking. And then I fell.
You should.
I should stop talking. Paul, tell us a little bit about your new book, The Pallbearers Club.
I don't even have a copy near me. What am I doing? So I'm in my daughter's room. For anyone watching this, I know this is both video and podcast.
Yeah.
So video people, just imagine
very Paul
very cool, angsty teen.
I was going to fake them out and be like a baby pink canopy bed with
not
ponies
that kind of teenage
everywhere.
daughter. No.
So the Pallbearers Club. I'm terrible at describing my books briefly, but I'll try to say briefly. The Pallbearers Club is presented as a found memoir of a character named Art Barbara, or as we say in the Boston area, Art Barbara.
Art Barbara.
And Art is the person who wrote this memoir renamed all the characters, including himself. So the first line is, "I am not Art Barbara," but that's who he claims to be throughout the whole book. Anyway, so his found memoir picks up in the late 80s when Art is a not so popular senior in high school, and in a panic where he realizes his only way to get out of town and get into college is to maybe start an extracurricular activity. He starts what's called the Pallbearers Club, where he volunteers at a local funeral home to serve elderly and homeless who don't have very many or any living relatives. So he doesn't get many classmates to join, and the ones that do, they don't really stick. But a strange older woman, maybe Jennifer right now.
I'm not
strange and older
woman.
But compared to an 18-year-old,
I know.
boy.
You're a
Good
little
night, everybody.
Boy.
That was a great podcast. Good night,
And
everybody.
bye, Paul.
No,
compared to an 18-year-old
yes.
boy, and even compared to most people, I am a strange older woman.
Who Art names Mercy in the memoir, joins the club, and she's a punk rock fan and likes to take Polaroid pictures of people and dead people. She likes to take pictures of those alive.
Yeah, the
and dead.
funeral director isn't so happy about her doing that either.
Yeah.
Like, could you not with the corpse? That's kind of rude.
Yeah, and so I guess briefly I would say, so Mercy may or may not be a supernatural sort of entity / person from a specific corner of New England folklore. And hopefully the fun part for the reader, or certainly the fun part for the writer, is that, this is Art's memoir, but at the end of every chapter, Mercy gets like a rebuttal. She writes in response, and it's handwritten. And in the first edition hardcovers, it's actually in red ink, which is really cool.
I saw that because our version, so we got a PDF, and so it's handwritten, but it's black. And so when I saw you open it, it was red. I'm like, oh, she took the red pen to it. I love
Yeah.
it.
I saw really cool. that you posted only the first edition's going to have the red ink. So I immediately pre-ordered it. Like when you announced it, I have many months ago. I was like, don't care, want it, need it. Click. I know I'm going to read it before that. It's Doesn't fine. Matter. Gonna have it in every format. Including
it is a beautiful looking book. I mean, William Morrow did an amazing job. I mean, so did Titan too, but William Morrow really went above and beyond with, I never brought up the idea of the 2-color ink, Jennifer, the strange, not older woman, just took a photo of.
I know, and it didn't work. But I have 2 photos that I took before this that did work. It's probably because it's like into blinding ring light.
Right. I guess, and also Mercy writes in the margins too.
Yeah, I love that she's doing it not just like a rebuttal afterwards, but throughout. Like every time he writes this novel, or he writes memoir, and she's like crossing it up. It's a novel, so even the cover it says a novel on it. Like, oh, that was her writing. Going, this isn't your story. You can't even get people's names right. I'm gonna fix this for you. Oh, that's what you think of me, really?
I was in love with the book immediately. Because I love meta books, I love found fiction, anything. When you dedicated the book, as you usually do, to your family, and she Mercy or whoever wrote who, I was like, I'm there. I am there for this 100%. Also, at her, and this is not a spoiler, but that you can't give yourself a nickname.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much a steadfast rule, I think.
Yeah, right? I mean. You can't punk art.
Really. No one called you that.
No. I tried to give myself a nickname once, but my defense was only for ping pong when I was in graduate school for math. So I don't know, a group of nerdy people. I named
checking off all the boxes there, Paul.
I named myself P-Nuke after Nuke Lelouch from.
Is that why your email address?
Yeah. What am I? Bull Durham. Because Nuke Lelouch is like this, very stupid guy who can just throw the baseball really hard, though. So, like, when I was playing ping pong obnoxiously with other math people, I was always spiking the ball. So I named myself P-Nuke. Yeah. That's the only time I've given myself a nickname. What's that?
Are you the one who, broke all the ping pong balls? Because we always see it, someone who, smashed the ping pong balls, guys. No. It's just a little tiny sphere, and it's empty inside. You can't whack it too hard, or you have just a flat. Yeah, we always had youth group rooms.
There's
always had those.
So much symbolism in there. It's just this flat, empty thing.
I respect the ping pong.
Okay, and Elisa has a question. I'll put it on here. She said, "Where did you get the idea for the Pallbearers Club? It's such a beautiful service to provide. It makes me want to read the book even more once it's out." And it's funny because in the book you do have the characters say, "Oh, I saw it on a news report and thought," and I just thought it's so funny. So this character's desperate to get into college, and of all the extracurriculars he comes up with, it's go to funerals. How is that an extracurricular activity?
I wish it had been.
You would have totally gone.
As someone who's still wearing her old clothes right now.
Well, and my kids' scout troop, we went to on Memorial Day or before Memorial Day, we went and planted flags for veterans. And that makes sense, but that's a one-time thing. It's not we're just always wandering around the cemetery. They don't usually like that.
Yeah.
Well, I know this story. So Paul, I can't wait for you to tell it.
Oh, sure. So Alyssa, I teach or have been teaching high school math for a really long time. And at the small school at which I teach, every Monday morning we get together for what's called corporate chapel, where the whole school piles in and the seniors do speeches and there's announcements. Monday morning is really not the best time for this. I'm not quite sure why, just because it's after the weekend. Everyone's totally exhausted and why are we here? So anyway, it was November of 2019. I had just finished Survivor Song. and was frankly looking forward to taking a little bit of a break because from writing.
And you hadn't realized that Survivor Song predicted the future at that point in time.
The pandemic was not even a thing yet. So there I was sitting, with the rest of the student body, and this really, a senior went up to make an announcement, and he, he's not, I wouldn't describe him as like, one of the popular jocks of the school. He, he's a really sweet, nice, kind kid. But, very sort of, introverted. So he gets up and he says, "Hey, I'm starting a new club, and it's called the Pallbearers Club." So instantly I woke up. I was half asleep.
Did you think you heard your name though? Were you?
I know.
No, I didn't. I did not.
Paul?
We've been making that joke for way too long.
Sure.
With the P-A-U-L.
Which I understand. Yeah. John Langan, I think, is going to try to actually cross out books and write P-A-U-L.
Yeah.
Just so we started,
trademark that.
The students started describing the club, and as is described in my novel, and I was like, wow, like I think I had a list of response. Like, that's a really nice thing to do. It's really sweet. But also as a horror writer, I was like, oh man, that can be like really creepy and, interesting. I have to do something with this.
Yeah. And Elisa, she is in education. So she is a philanthropic person. So she's totally going to the service side, and you're all horror. So I love how this was.
I know. And she's like, I'm going to pitch this to my school. It's a beautiful idea.
Yeah. So after he announced it, I think he mentioned like, there are other places that do this. And I have a vague, brief recollection of maybe going online and seeing other references to those kind of clubs, but it's been almost 3 years at this point since I've Googled it. So I'm sure, I don't think he made, I guess the short of it is I don't think he made it up out of whole cloth kind of thing. But yeah, that's where it started. And my first leap was, okay, the Pallbearers Club, and just thinking about the student that went up there, I was like, geez, could I have done that as a senior in high school? And I started thinking about myself and how awkward and
which, for instance,
lonely and unpopular. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna make me do this in this book, or my fictional me.
Fictional me.
And part of it was like I was honestly looking for. I wanted to write something different than Survivor Song and Cabin at the End of the World. Those two books were really on top of each other, back to back.
And they're not feel good reads.
No, for sure. And they're also like they have thriller aspects to them, and they're over like really short periods of time. And they really sort of heavily engage with like the awful now. Yeah. So part of me was like, I want to write something different. I want something that's a little bit slower, has a little bit more time to meander. Maybe something even a little bit more inward,
Yeah.
And so the story fit the bill.
And I feel like Allison and I are children of like, the 90s. That's when we were teenagers, and we were, children in the 80s. And like, I think our generation, our 40 plus generation. We are very nostalgic for a time when we didn't have cell phones, a time when we could just like leave our parents' house for like 12 hours at a time with a strange older woman and come back and be like, strange older woman sleeping at our house. And your parents are like, okay, that's fine. Crazy kids.
Well, my parents wouldn't have been okay with that, but I'm sure most parents
on the couch, mine would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
Debatable for mine, but I love that.
No, it was definitely, fun looking back, but at the same time, like, I didn't want it to be, and I don't want it to be like a nostalgia where it's like, hey, everything's great. It's like, no. Yeah, right. So I want, and that's pretty clear. And actually, if anything, with the exception of things here and there, like Art's life is definitely much worse in the 80s than maybe like even how he views himself. He's in a much better place later as opposed to earlier in the book, even though other things might not be better related to Mercy as they go through.
Yeah, related to Mercy. The thing with Art is, I think his life as a teenager now would be so different had he gotten up and just like who he was. I think people embrace like your inner freak flag now.
Or more than they did then. I don't know if they do too much, but I think, if he would have been a child of this millennia, it'd be a little different than what he went through then.
He might have had a few people join the club.
Yeah.
And not just
a few people, but it was...
I didn't last.
Yeah. So I would say it's just, just from my experience as a teacher too, I don't know if it would be better. I think it would just be different. I don't think, kids are, I love, my daughter and her friends and my son, et cetera. Like kids these age in some ways are really amazing, but there's still also plenty of bullies. And the areas at which it happens is, as insidious because now like so much of it happens over Snapchat or online. So, I mean,
so you can't even get away
from it. Yeah. I don't think it's like a teen from then compared to a teen today would necessarily, be more free from those sort of, terrible things happening to them. It's just,
I feel like we can all agree that and this is why we still have like teenage and school trauma nightmares. Don't take off the leather jacket.
It's getting too warm in here.
I'm wearing a dog collar.
You can take your collar off.
I think, being a teenager is horrifying.
Yeah.
Even if you're not writing horror, and I would say like Pallbearers Club does have horror aspects to it, but it is so amazing as just a literary novel. Like I would have a hard time saying, oh, this is a horror novel. Because though there were parts that I was petrified and horrified, horrified at my own self, being like, oh no, that's me, I'm Art Barbara. I just think it really transcends genres.
Thank you. I'm lucky that my editor and publisher really have like I do sort of like a very wide view of what can and can't be considered horror. So I've never really ever had any pushback from Jennifer Brell, my editor, on any of the novels. Like this isn't horror enough or what. I mean, if anything,
add more bodies or something.
Yeah.
Like,
if anything,
more death, please.
Yeah. If anything, I think they're like, oh, you're shading towards thriller with these books or cycle, and I'm like, but. I sort of warned them, like, I don't think you can call this one a thriller.
Well, what would you call it? Because I liked how Jen said it was found fiction, and I feel that, and I love the dichotomy of it's memoir, it's a novel, and so much of you is in art. I don't know how much, but of course that's who I'm picturing. But I would agree. Like I wouldn't say, oh, if you're not a horror reader, don't touch this, because it didn't feel to me like, oh, this isn't the book that's going to keep you up all night and make you go, I just can't ever sleep again. It's going to be the book that you're going to be in these characters and wanting to see what happens next because you want to see what happens between these two people. And that to me, I don't know what that is. What is that?
What is that, Paul? Tell us. You're the teacher.
What is it? Well, like from what, I totally get what you're saying. And like, at first I'm a terrible judge of what's scary or not. of anything that I write, like I have no idea.
Because you're scared of a lot of things, right?
Yeah, I'm scared of everything. I mean, scare is so subjective. But no, there's definitely horror elements in this book. I mean, I don't have a problem with people calling it horror or literary fiction or whatever you want to call it. I love the idea that, not only I, but like so many people working now just get to mix genres. So, that's the hope. I mean, I've been telling people, it's not a horror comedy either, just because if you say horror comedy, most people think, oh, the horror parts are the funny parts.
Yeah. They're thinking like it's Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
No, and it's not that either.
No, which I mean, my hope is that there are parts that are fun. The funny parts are humorous and the horrific parts are creepy. Right.
I think,
and the sad parts are sad. That's kind of what
I was saying. I think I was hit more by the sads than I was with the scaries.
Yeah.
But I think everybody's subjective with that, because when you start connecting with these characters, then things that happen to them, whether they're scary or not, you're hurting for them, which is, I think, a good reaction to have. Like, okay, I need to know what's happened here and how are these people moving forward after whatever just happened? Because there's a lot of those points, no spoilers, of like, how are they going to move past this? This is not all right.
Yeah, it does span over 3 decades towards just about present time.
So, I mean, it's fair to say, as you're sitting there, you were wearing a leather jacket, you have a jean jacket near you, you're wearing a Husker Du shirt. There are a lot of overlaps between you and Art Barbara.
Yeah.
Was that easier or harder to write?
As
a New Englander.
Yeah. That's a great question. So draft wise, I feel like it was easier to write. The hard part was what made it harder was the revising side of things, because there'd be times I'd be putting so much of autobiography on myself, and not like straight autobiography either. It'd be something that was like tweaked, but it would be something rooted in something that had happened to me. And, I'd put that in like, oh, that's really cool. But I would have to stop and like really try to be objective and like, okay, the reader's not going to know that this thing that you sort of twisted would actually be a part of your life. Does it need to be there for the story? So that to me was the big challenge. And more than probably the only book that came close in terms of biggest edits was Disappearance at Devil's Rock. So like when I turned in this draft to my editor, the final product that you have, I ended up cutting like 30 pages of stuff, or 10,000 words roughly. And most of it was all ancillary stuff. There was one like horror set piece that actually was kind of creepy, but it didn't fit. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense with the logic of everything else that had happened. So I'm glad I took it out. Maybe I'll throw it on my newsletter or something at some point.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, just because I don't know.
Sorry.
Just because I spent a lot of time writing it. It's like I got to put it out.
Right, but I understand what you're saying, that you have there's a logical consistency of what happens, and no matter how cool a scene is, if it disrupts the rest of it, it can't stay.
Yeah. No, and that's the hard, that's the hard part of writing, or figuring out like what gets to stay and what goes.
I'm currently in that stage with my work in progress where I'm just like, okay, I can't give up parts yet emotionally, but what I'm doing is highlighting huge chunks where I'm like, this is only important to me.
Right.
And is it important to people who read this? No, it's not. But I'm like, I love it so much. Just highlight it right now.
And it's hard to let go of that stuff. It's fun. So when I first, this will somewhat tie in, but when I first met Stephen Graham Jones in person, like he and I struck up like an email correspondence because I was a big fan of his book Demon Theory, and he had read some of my short stories, and he came to Providence. Geez, when was that? Like 2011, maybe even I take that back earlier, like 08 or 09 or something. And I went out for dinner, and like I had a book for him to sign. He signed it, and like over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I had him sign a bunch of books. And every time he signed for those earliest books of his, he wrote, "This one's pure autobiography." And I was like, Stephen, like this book features a time traveling camelopard. But but now like it took me a long time to sort of figure that out. But I know what he means by it. So I feel like with this book, especially, I get to return the favor. At least to Stephen. So I can use the same, for the only time I signed a book for Stephen, and I said, "Hey, Stephen, this one's pure autobiography."
I feel like you should sign like 1 or 2 copies of Survivor Song like that. Just...
This one predicted the future is what that one did.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so if Art Barbara is you, is there an inspiration for Mercy?
Is there an inspiration for Mercy besides the strange older lady right here in front of you?
Yes.
No.
Because we were dreamcasting her, but
we were dreamcasting her.
So I would say, I mean, I don't know. No. So the short answer is no, there's not one specific person. I mean, I kind of feel like, art is certainly the biggest part of my personality, but Mercy is certainly like a chunk of it as well. But in terms of like a character, like she's sort of whole cloth, her own thing. Like I didn't have, I wish I had a close friend / frenemy like that in high school, but
like an older female that like picks you up in her car and like you get secondhand high on pot.
My parents would have been so excited if I had
a girl, any girl. Please take him.
I feel like, the reason why I said earlier, I was like, my parents would have let anybody sleep on my couch as they would have just been so excited that they were like, she has a boyfriend.
There's somebody who talks
to my gosh. Somebody talks to like this weird girl.
Right.
Or it's our child. So.
Yeah, no, so many of those painfully awkward and hopefully funny. I think it's fun. I thought it was funny. Especially the stuff with Art's parents in the beginning. These aren't spoilers. I mean, certainly your stuff that are like tweaked right out of experience, and Art's like ailments like scoliosis and stuff like that. That's all stuff that I had firsthand experience.
To that extent.
Okay, all that health stuff. Yeah.
Because I mean, seriously, where it also borders on horror is body horror.
Yeah, definitely.
Through all this, and I have scoliosis, but not to that degree. And I threw out my back at 13, but nobody was like, "By the way, we're putting spine stenosis and welding you together, and you're bionic now, or can't go through a metal detector." I'm not really sure, but as soon as I'm going, well, I know Paul's really tall. Did he have to go through all this? And then I just hurt for your back.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, no, it was so long ago. It sort of feels like, and that's sort of been a weird part about writing this book, is it almost feels like I'm remembering this now as I wrote it, which is, wait a minute, that's not actually how it happened, because,
you're like, no, my surgery did not happen.
No, but 6 days after high school graduation, I was 6 foot when I went under, 6'3" when I woke up. And it was a big to do.
That's insane. Just the height of it, everything of it.
Height.
The height, 6'3". My mom had that same surgery,
Yeah.
but at a much later age. So like when you're, again, this is not really spoilers because anybody who looks up spinal surgery and this like spinal not stenosis, but like scoliosis surgery, like they do shave parts of your hip bone off to like weld your neck and back together. And I remember when my mom went through it, I was, you know, sort of young, but old enough to go, I have to remember her words because they seemed so terrifying to me. Like, oh, they shave off part of your hip and then they build your back with the rest of it. Okay, that's... And then when you described it, I was just like,
that's it right there.
That's it.
Right. No, I mean, it could have been worse. I think because at the time when I had my surgery, this is real life now in 1989, it was sort of cutting edge, I think. Oh, there's my dog barking at somebody. Can you hear her?
I did. I almost immediately yelled at my dog.
So they told me like if this was only like a handful of years earlier, if I'd had the same surgery, I would have had to have spent like 6 months in a full body cast or something ridiculous.
So weirdly, my mom's had spinal surgery 3 times. One was when I was a baby and she was gone for months in a full body cast. The second I was in high school, and the third was just last year, and it was like one and done. It was just like, oh yeah, we'll just like slice her open, do this thing, send her to rehab. But she was like out of the hospital the next day. And I look back and remember like being a 3-year-old and my mother having spinal fusion surgery and her just not being there. And it was the early 80s.
Yeah, but when you told me she was out that quickly this last time, I was like, that can't be right. But apparently so much of that's COVID related that people were like getting these surgeries and it's like, oh yeah, they would normally be in for a while, but we don't have the bed space and we can't let people stay there. So off you go. Hope you're all right later. It's like, you just cut open their spine. Shouldn't we? No, they're fine. All right.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a doctor.
No, me neither. No. I don't even play one on TV.
Paul's the closest because he knows math.
Because, well, we certainly don't.
Sure.
Forget it with all of that. No, but one of the things I loved about this was the character of Mercy. And, you say she's an amalgamation. But as soon as I told Jen, I'm like, are you watching Stranger Things? And she's like, why? And I'm like, well, here's who I'm picturing as Mercy. So for me, it was just one of those things where I happened to be watching the show the day before I started reading your book. And Maya Hawke went in my head immediately.
It went in my head too. The second she said Stranger Things, and I'm like, oh, the girl from the ice cream shop. I'm not watching.
Any idea what I'm talking about?
Okay. Yeah. I should know the actor's name, but yes.
No, but and for me, because I'm laughing because she's the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, and so for me, it's
I didn't know that.
So the people I knew, who I think was my age, who were a little older, I guess, but. Reality bites. This is my generation, and now their kids are playing it. It confuses my head that their kids are playing something set in the 80s. So the character's older than I would have been at that point in time, and it just gives my head like this time traveling. I can't even keep up with any of it. But she if this gets made into a movie, I'm just saying, Maya Hawke.
Maya Hawke would be a great Mercy.
She may be overplaying characters from the 80s, though. She might be like. No more, thank you. And then you gotta find some new undiscovered talent to really vocalize this.
So you mentioned Hollywood, so I'm going to mention the Hollywood elephant in this room.
Are we allowed to talk about that?
We're just going to mention it, and we're going to congratulate. There is an M. Night Shyamalan elephant in this room, and that is Paul. Congratulations on Cabin at the End of the World being turned already, been a movie, like it's blurry.
It's on IMDb.
It's on IMDb.
It exists. We aren't
it exists.
Yes.
Paul heard, so it's true-ish that we're only going to talk about it in vagues. So congratulations on Cabin at the End of the World being something made by somebody named M. Night Shyamalan for Hollywood.
That was the biggest announcement ever done.
Thank you, I think.
Is that? I'm like,
yeah.
I know you're not allowed to talk about it, and I don't want to grill you with a million questions other than if and when could you get me Jonathan Groff's autograph?
Yeah, I think there would be a line as Lisa is the world's biggest fan.
Oh, damn it. I'm like, that my Broadway boyfriend?
Your Broadway boyfriend. Well, and so I saw this and I had already planned, I wanted to read the book. I'm like, well, that's it. I'm reading it now because Paul's coming on our show and I'll listen to it. And I'm sitting there and the more I listened to it, the more I was confused by the casting. And I'm going, who is that going to, because none of that's in there. So if anybody goes and looks up IMDb, there's names attached, but characters aren't attached. So I'm like moving people around going, are these two? Wait, huh?
I've moved them around a lot in my head, and it's better every time.
It's fun, whatever it is. If it's a game where pick 3 random actors, and they're very random, and then put them in a book and see if it makes any sense at all. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. And Marie Sutra says, wow, that is awesome news. Marie, we think so too. We want to
think so too. And Marie, thank you. You're awesome. Marie's book is amazing. So, Paul, we are technically allowed to congratulate you, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
I take congratulations for any manner of things.
Any manner. I know you're not allowed to talk about it. Part of me wants to go like super mind hunter to pull up Jonathan Groff again.
That's a great show. I love Mindhunter.
God, it's so good.
I think they keep like teasing, oh, maybe there's going to be a 3rd season, but I don't know.
I mean, if you have any pull with David Fincher.
Yeah, I don't have pull with very many people.
Oh my gosh. So congratulations on whatever is happening in 2023 on the IMDb page.
Well, and see, this is something that children can be proud of because the 3 lead actors are all attached to properties children would know. Because I'm going, wait, so you've got Frozen and you've got Guardians of the Galaxy and Harry Potter. I don't know how this all works in one movie.
Who's in Frozen?
Jonathan Groff.
Oh, sorry.
I have small children who make you watch these things. But he gets a really cool 80s style ballad in Frozen.
Mindhunter, The Servant, and some hot guy that I don't know who's from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Some hot guy that you don't know. So you haven't seen all of the MCU, and therefore you don't know.
No, my reference points are different.
That's totally fair. Mine are children.
It's okay. So Paul, we won't hammer you about this, but I did want to give you a big congratulations because
thank you.
I might have made a shrieking noise when that came on my IMDb. It was horrifying for everybody in my home. My dog, my husband, most of all me, probably. I was like, oh gosh, that came out of my mouth. Who am I, Mercy?
That shirt, Jen. You got to show us the shirt. You can't
people can't really see it. I'm afraid I'm going to knock everything over.
You might.
It's like a shredded 80s punk rock tee. I'm wearing a dog collar that's made out of 3 vintage purse bags.
Oh. Did you make it yourself?
I did not. Yeah. But I had a friend make it for me. And she was lovely.
Make other friends' dog collars.
Yeah.
I know, because I was like, I really just have this idea of what I want. And she got up a bunch of purse handles and added a ton of metal. So it's very heavy, but I didn't take mine off.
I'm sorry.
He's trying to jacket shame you, Paul. Don't let her.
That's Paul. That was so New England. No. Put on the jean jacket. Put on the jean jacket.
Oh, the Jaws jean jacket.
That is more. That is more true to who I was as a.
I'm just wondering which is cooler.
Middle schooler.
I don't mean cooler. Sure. I mean cooler.
Cooler. People who were only listening to the audio, Paul had planned a costume change, and it has happened.
Oh, yeah. Acid washed.
Acid washed jean jacket.
With the red of the Husker Du. And I've got. I took a blurry picture to send to Jen. She's like, does that say Depeche Mode? I'm like, it says vacation mode. It's from Target. I don't have cool clothes. Sorry, guys.
I was like, I love your Depeche Mode
too.
Yeah, and see, if I just keep my hair down, I can pretend I'm a lot cooler than I am.
You shouldn't have told anybody.
I shouldn't have said, but it's my summer shirt. You know how I can show off my sunburn all the time. It's fine.
Oh, you're in California. Paul and I are here in New England, so.
But I'm pale and I don't belong in California. I am not a native, and this is proof.
So, Paul, to go back to the pun of it being the Pallbearers, we've talked to you once on this show before. You and I have talked for New England Crime Bake about how you've ruined things for your family, your wife's childhood home, the cabin in New Hampshire where your family vacationed. Was part of your brain thinking, I'm going to ruin my own name by calling this book the Pallbearers Club?
No, I mean, well, because
No,
the title came fully formed, but yeah, I know I'm always ruining something. But this time I thought it was only fair to really sort of just abuse myself in this book, as opposed to other people that I like. Although it's funny, my brother, this is not a spoiler, texted me earlier. He's on vacation, poolside, and he said, I'm sitting at poolside crying my eyes out because of X that he had just read. And I said, oh, that's great. I love it. Sorry, Dan.
I will admit, so like speaking of like texts and messages you get mid-vacation, I was recently in Iceland and I started reading the Pallbearers Club on the flight. You get to Iceland, the sun never sets. It's crazy. It's insane. The wind is weird. And I stayed up for so many hours and I was very invested in the Pallbearers Club. And I feel like I have no idea how many hours I was awake when I sent you probably a deranged email.
That was very nice.
It was a very nice deranged email from the strange older lady.
I mean, you said something about you had like some new Icelandic friends who were going to make a dog collar out of one local and 2 seals, but I just went with it.
That is not true.
No, it's not true.
Is that legal? You can't do that to seals.
No.
You worry about the seals, not the local that also was included in the dog collar, but that's okay.
There's probably not as much protection for the local as there is for the seals. Elisa wanted to know, because earlier you had mentioned that you wanted to take a break, but then you wrote this instead. So you mentioned earlier that you meant to take a break before being inspired to write the Pallbearers Club. Are you taking that break now, or do you have something else in the works?
So at that time, the Survivor Song was the last book of my deal. So I didn't have a deadline hanging over me. And when I say take a break, like I just wanted to take like a little break, just because I felt like I'd been writing fairly constantly those novels, and I had in my head that I might try writing a screenplay for a short story. So it was going to be a short break, and I did eventually want to have something in the spring to pitch my editor, which weirdly became the spring of 2020. Probably not an ideal time to be pitching anything, but so
you mean when the actual
so for process? That, like I was excited, but what I did once I had the idea for Pallbearers Club, I kind of just let it sit and simmer for a while. Like I wasn't in a rush, and part of it was I didn't know about Mercy yet. Like I didn't know what the maybe supernatural element was going to be.
I love that.
I love that it didn't just all show up together. That it was like, hey, I'm going to use this part, and then now what?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that part was sort of like a lucky discovery on my part. The Mercy part of things, I should say. As far as like right now, no, I'm happily in the middle of like a bunch of deadlines. So I'm actually like 2 books ahead now. I have a short story. So I turned in a short story collection that's going to be out next summer, and that's called The Beast You Are. And because and I hope I don't say this joke too often, but actually I haven't done a whole lot of podcasts yet. So, but
I think we're early on your book tour for Pallbearers.
Well, my sort of joke is because I know exactly what mainstream America wants, in their fiction. The short story collection has a 30,000 word original novella. So that's the biggest part of the book, is something brand new. And it's a 30,000 word anthropomorphic animal novella that features a giant monster and a cat that's a slasher. And I wrote it in free verse.
Oh,
so that's what everybody wants.
Right on the hot button of what people are screaming for. I'm kind of screaming for that. And I saw Allison's face once he said anthropomorphic. She was like, I like those. In.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, that's a story I've had in my head actually for a while. I usually don't wait a long time and I usually don't have a lot of stories hanging around either. But I knew like, an anthropomorphic animal novel would be a hard thing for my publisher. But they unexpectedly, when I pitched them the Pallbearers Club, said, hey, we want the Pallbearers Club. We want another short story collection, which I didn't say anything about, and another novel. I'm like, I said, okay, for this collection, I'll do the story I've been sort of thinking about for a while as a novella. And actually, as it turns out, it's much better off at this word length, I think, than an actual novel. So I'm happy. Hopefully my publisher's happy. And then I have a novel due next May, which I've written about 50 pages.
50 pages is good. I thought you were going to say 50 words.
Yeah, no.
To be like, that's not a start, Paul.
Well, I was hoping it's 50,000 words, and I would say, hey, your halfway-ish done, but if
it was 50,000 words, I'm like 2/3 done. I write short books. I wish I could write a long book, sort of. I don't know.
I mean, no, because I feel like there's always going to be
now.
somebody who's like cut 30,000 words from this, and that's much harder than cutting 10,000 words.
Right.
You're like, oh, that's a third of this of my really important writer ideas.
Yeah.
Yikes! I can't even imagine 30,000. Just is painful to hear.
Well, 30 pages, 10,000 words. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
For Pallbearers, anyway. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, though, it was freeing to be able to have like that little bit of time to go, I'm not on a deadline, and to be able to marinate with that story. Because I love that you had parts of it, but not the whole thing. Yeah. Because I think sometimes people think you have either one or two things. You either totally outline and the whole story is completely formed, and then you're just filling in the blanks as you go. Or the other side being, I have no idea what you're doing, but you're just typing it out and it forms. So I love that marination stage. And I feel like so often we don't give ourselves the time to have that, because we've got deadlines or pressure to be producing something. And then you're just like, I'm cranking out something, but it needed that marination in order for it to happen. So
I agree.
Brain doesn't marinate anymore, but theoretically it should.
No, it's a great point. I agree totally that I think the hardest thing about being a writer today is patience. Harder for newer writers or writers who are just getting a start to be patient, just because like if you're involved online, you just see everyone talking about all the amazing things you're doing, and you just feel like, it's hard not to feel like, not that it's a competition, but you feel like you're falling behind, or et cetera.
It does feel like that. Yeah.
No, it does, because you'll see where somebody else is, or what book deal they're on, or how many bestsellers they have, and if your career isn't on the same trajectory, and no two careers are on the same trajectory, and you also don't know how long they've been on that particular trajectory. Like all these people who are overnight successes, we didn't hear about the 7 books that never went anywhere. That
it's an overnight success that took 20 years to happen. So 20 years and one night. And that's just math that I don't understand, because I went to school for theater.
We don't do math on this show.
I won't be doing math for the next year. I'm taking a year off from school, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah. Oh, wow, you are? That's okay.
Yeah, my school very kindly has given me a sabbatical. Yeah, no, I'm very excited. A little nervous. We'll see. I tend to get a little squirrely if I'm inside my own head for too long.
I was going to say, do you have like a fear that by like mid-November you're just going to be sitting still in your daughter's room, but around you's only going to be like empty bags of Doritos and like beer cans?
That's the dream. That's not
the dream. Your daughter's going to be like, get out of my
except
room.
For that part. Yeah, she would not allow.
You'll be like, Mom doesn't allow me in our room anymore.
No, and I'm picturing the opposite, where he just starts showing up at school events because he misses it, and he's like, rally. And they're like, Mr. Tremblay, you're not supposed to be here right now, but I'm cheering on the team. What team? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything to be on campus again. Because my husband's a teacher, and I know the year that he was off the full year teaching, but he was online. And so some people went back halfway through the year as COVID protocols were lifted. His class stayed virtual, and I know he was just out of his mind to get out of the cave, which is this room I'm in right now with not this behind me, but this became his office and everything. And he'd walk out of the room like, honey, I'm home, having never left all day. He missed being in that classroom, but he was still in the classroom. I think it was like that lack of people. So we need to make sure Paul gets out. Someone takes him for walks.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, can somebody take Paul for walks once a week? I mean, you have a dog, so the dog will do that.
The dog will take you for a walk.
The dog will walk you.
Well, if it was up to her, she wouldn't walk me. She doesn't want to go for a walk. She's very obstinate, but we do go for walks.
We have a dog. I have a dog who, when we say, he's right here next to me, I'm saying the word walk a bunch of times, he's not responding. When we say walk, he runs through the house to hide, and we have to like chase him with his harness, and then we feel like so abusive because we're like, you're gonna walk.
Yeah,
you're supposed to want
shoes
this.
On my children. Get your shoes on. We're supposed to go to the park. You need to get out of there. And then they, complain that we don't go anywhere because they won't.
Dogs, children, grown adult writers, we need to be aired out every once in a while.
I agree. Yeah,
like just somebody force us to air ourselves. So, Paul,
we'll keep I
had a question about your actual writing process for Pallbearers Club, because it is a found memoir with comments on top of it.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you wrote the Mercy voice versus the Art Barbara voice. Like, did you get to the end of a chapter and then go back to the beginning and add Mercy, or did you write the whole book and then add Mercy? Did you know her? Did you hear her as you were writing it and make notes at the same time? Like, how does that brain work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think geez, it's funny. If I remember or not, but I would say generally I tend to write as it appears. Like I'm not someone I wish I could skip around, like do one chapter and then move back to this one. I have to go in order. So I know. Now I got excited about the Mercy stuff. So as I was writing, like if a comment occurred to me, I would stop and put it in the margin. Yeah. So now I spent obviously way more time on her. At the end of every chapter, she makes comments, but I kind of wrote it as is for the most part. I mean, maybe I skipped ahead a little bit, just like finish Art's thoughts and then go back and added a few comments here and there. But
oh no, what does that say about your self-esteem that you were like, just finish Art's part and get to the made up character?
Yeah. I mean, so I want to say like, I don't want to say it's like a desperate begging author, but like,
I hope say it like that. That's why we're here.
I think and I hope the book is fun and it's creepy and it's funny and that you don't have to obviously live through my life or know any of these other things that, to enjoy the book. And, the fun and weird part as a writer, which I'm sure you both can attest to, is, the book that you write obviously has the themes that you put into it, et cetera. But like your book is going to mean something different to you than it's going to the other readers. And the other readers are going to pick up stuff you probably didn't even intend consciously, but subconsciously.
Those are the best things.
Yeah. I mean,
people are like, oh, did you mean to do this fancy thing?
Yeah.
And you're like, I definitely did.
Yeah, that weird subconscious communication that goes between author and reader is sort of the magic of fiction. So all of that is like a caveat, like, because I feel like this makes it sound like a dusty thing. Like for me, but a big part of the book to me felt like, or for me, meant that I was in some ways writing about the relationship between me and creativity or me and writing in general, and how that's tied in with anxiety and depression at times, and how sometimes it's a healthy thing and sometimes it's not a healthy thing. So in terms of Art and Mercy, a lot of the times, that voice is the voice of doubt, but, refracted through the lens of the actual story.
Yeah. No, I think like I loved that because as somebody who like struggles with, I mean, I think most writers do with anxiety disorder, depression, and like all the fun stuff. It's hard to be in your head for so long. So I think giving the reader and yourself as a writer the Mercy voice, like I felt freed when I was reading your book because I was just like, oh my gosh, it's so refreshing to have another voice saying all the things, because I related so much to Art Barbara that I was just like, sometimes I'm like, it's too close, I'll die. And then immediately the next line, Mercy says something absolutely hilarious. And I was just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
It's all fine. It's all fine.
As far as like the 80s and 90s vibe, like, Art purposely, I tried to make him sound like one of my angsty heroes music songs. Like the songs from the 90s were so angsty and introverted and looking inward. So Art wallows and all those sometimes self-pitying, thoughts and Mercy. Mercy's there to call him on his bullshit.
Yeah.
and that's what I love. Well, and that's one of the things I love about it, because so often you don't have those dual voices to be able to do that, but you'd be able to basically say the line and have somebody else have a little arrow. It's like, really, Art. Yeah. And I mean, that's no spoiler, so I won't be able to say anything specific. But anytime he'd kind of go there, and sometimes she's calling him out of like, did I really say it like that? Come on, my dialogue would not be like that. Like, because she's not just reflecting how he feels about himself, but how he thinks he's being perceived by others or how other people are talking to him. There's one scene that's very, very, I won't say specifics, but it's with his parents and involving the dinner table that I was just laughing so hard at. And I'm just going, and it's presented in a very funny way. So there's one of the places where the humor is there, and that's clearly meant to be funny.
Thank you.
But it was so relatable.
It's a great scene.
But
It's a
to
great.
have
It
people to
reminded
comment
me
on it.
of like the show Freaks and Geeks a little bit. So that's like, you know, that vibe. God, I can't remember what I was about to say. Probably not important.
It may have had to do with dinner because I
It
mentioned
might have had something to do with food.
it could be food. But yeah, like, because he's getting mocked. It's like, why are you only eating this? It's like, it's fine, okay? And it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be just eating these things and you're going through the drive-thru again. And how many teenage people get picked on for what their choices of food are, not just in their family, but then this girl who, it's like, how does he feel about this girl? This is an interesting girl, and she's commenting on it too. It's like, he can't even get away from it. It's like, oh, sorry, dude, sorry. But then also, like, oh, hey, all you eat is cereal, apparently. That's all
Still
that's
do.
down here.
That
And
is
that's
all. I was going to say, that is all some people eat, and that is a valid life choice.
Is it though? I'm not sure any doctor or nutritionist will say
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm like looking away, just like, it's not me. I don't just eat cereal, but
Well,
I
I mean,
sometimes
you eat
I
soup.
sometimes go for like, I eat soup every day. I have like, it's, you know, I have a routine.
Cereal is a green soup. It's
Right.
green soup in milk.
I have the same soup every day. No, I'm out of my cereal phase. But
I'm still in it for breakfast.
breakfast,
cereal.
you know,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm not going to judge you.
I put blueberries on it now, though, mostly, so that helps.
That's good. That's
I put
fruit.
blueberries on my blintzes. That is not healthy. Look, they're frozen. They're from Trader Joe's, and I put them in about a pound of butter. So
That
healthy.
sounds all good. So I was gonna say, like, another funny like Mercy-ism, or like just like how she comments, is something that I always think when I read actual memoir, is when people relive verbatim conversations.
Yeah.
She's like, how could you remember all that? Come on.
And
now.
I
You
was
really
just like,
remember all that?
thank you for like, that was the voice of every memoir reader out there. And I love memoir, love to read it, but I'm always just like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You don't have that great a memory. Do you really? Nobody does.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun to have, you know, to have a book where I got to play with really two unreliable narrators, and it's, but at the same time, like, they're not necessarily purposefully being unreliable. Like,
No,
maybe
I think
one of them might be sometimes, but it's not.
I think they would both swear they were telling the truth.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just about to like
Stack
be
of
pretentious and quote Shakespeare, but I'm not going to. So Paul, I'm a subscriber to your newsletter, so I know, like, you know, a little bit about you. Would you rather swim in the ocean with a shark, which is close by but not so close it's definitely going to attack you, or eat a pickle sandwich?
I knew you were gonna make that horrible.
This is horrible. This is Sophie's choice.
Well, he's wearing a Jaws jacket now, so I feel like I already know the answer to this.
But no, you've got to. Isn't it awful?
Know.
As somebody
is
who
awful.
hates pickles almost more than anything in the entire
I
world.
think I might have to have the sandwich just because.
Well, because the fear of sharks is that bad. Even if
I
it's
don't want to
far
die.
enough away. Oh, you don't want to die.
What kind of shark? Maybe it's like a nice nurse shark. They aren't going to bother you.
Yeah. Okay. It's a nurse shark.
Real
Yeah.
sharks, they eat plankton. You're not plankton.
Yeah, I didn't
You're
even
totally
say what
fine.
kind of shark.
That's
So,
true. I wish
how
I thought of
about
that loophole.
a nice shark, but it's super close, or a sandwich of pickles.
If it's a nice shark, I guess I'll deal.
I will
With
take
swimming
all
with
the
a nice
unwanted
shark.
pickles.
Yeah.
Like, one of my writing friends sends me jars of pickles. So anybody wants to
Gross.
send pickle, he made them himself, and they were delicious. Okay, Josh, shout out to the pickles that are in my fridge right now. They're delicious. Obviously, Jen and Paul don't want any pickles. Don't send them to them. Okay,
No.
I will take all pickles.
My spine is going like, ooh.
Okay,
Mine
can
would
you
if it
eat
could.
things and not pickles. Like, the soup I was eating, Jen, that's my favorite soup, is kimchi tofu mushroom soup. Do you do kimchi? That's pickled, sort of.
I can do pickled things, but I don't do mushrooms because of the texture, and pickles just because of everything.
How do I even feed you? I don't need.
You wouldn't be able to. I would come with a box of cereal and my can of soup.
Cereal. Here's my corn pops and a Red Bull. And we're good.
It has to be a New England thing where we're just like so finicky and like fussy.
Yeah. I know, to bring him up again, I know Stephen Graham Jones is definitely on team no pickle. And he's
okay.
He's a pretty finicky eater. He has way more on his no list than I do.
See, I just think I'm a
Yeah.
goat because there's almost nothing I won't eat unless I have like a non-aggression pact with the animal, which now, thanks to reading Pearl by Mallerman, I won't eat pork. It's delicious. Just kind of scared of it now, but it's the same reason I won't eat like shark fin soup or alligators because I'm afraid they're going to come after me. That's just like
For revenge.
It's weird
Yeah.
karma.
yeah,
Weird
it's karma, not pickiness. So otherwise, I'll eat whatever. I don't really care.
I feel like we're learning so much about each other right
Yeah.
now during the food conversation.
People are like,
You know,
what is this?
I'm much better than I used to be. My mother, who I talk to, most every day, still is like, I can't believe all these things that you eat now.
Like,
for
you're
anyone
so
who reads the book,
brave.
as a child.
compared to what I used to eat, which was hardly anything.
Yeah, I feel like
You give
for-
mothers out there hope that their children.
Yeah, I
actually
give
broaden
her
their
hope, certainly, I suppose.
I remember a couple years ago, I picked up a bug with my bare hands and put it outside, and my mother was like, "You have matured so much. When I was little, I had to vacuum up bugs from your room because you cried." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a grown up now,
Right.
but sometimes I still want to cry when I see bugs."
You
And I
live in the
definitely
woods.
want to
What are
cry
you
when
doing?
I know, and I live in the woods. I
There's
won't lie.
bugs there.
Yep, this is why, every once in a while you have to air out the writer. You have to force her to go outside and be with the ticks.
You can just get in a car and go to where people are. I'm not making you go in the woods, I promise. Same goes for you, Paul. You don't have to go in the woods. You don't have to swim in the ocean. You don't even have to eat pickles. Just come out of the room at some point.
Choices. Yeah.
Choices. You're making
Valid
a nice
life
life choices. Valid life choices. Paul, you have been fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for putting up with us.
Oh, anytime.
I guess that's always like the
This
first
is a lot of
thing.
fun.
Thanks for putting up with us. And like our costumes and my like failed attempt to take a picture. All of that
And
was
costume
great.
change. I want that
And you
on the
had a
record.
costume change.
Yes.
Paul had a costume change halfway through. For the record, Allison, you're the lawyer. Please note that.
I will
in
put that on the record.
The official record.
It'll go in the transcript.
The only Vox Vomitus guest to have had a costume change, right?
You actually, you are the only
Okay.
Vox Vomitus guest to have a costume change.
All right.
We've had somebody, and this was
We've had
amazing.
masks.
We've had masks. We've
Okay.
had people have to leave for bathroom breaks. We had somebody leave Maycob. Amazing. She got hot sauce in her eye.
Hot sauce in the
somehow.
eye. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Most Texas
Not for
thing
her,
that's
though.
ever happened
Yeah.
on our show. She was awesome. She's like, sorry, y'all. I got some
got
hot sauce in my
sauce.
eye.
Yeah.
We're like,
And we're like,
May,
we
what
love
were
you
you doing?
so much. But you are our first costume change. So, yes. So thank you for being here, Paul. Thank you, Allison, of
Thank you.
course. Everybody stay tuned for next week when we have Caitlin Hamilton Summey and her book, Geographies of the Heart. And then the following week is Allison and I's 2-year Voxiversary.
Woohoo.
So we don't know what we're gonna do. We're probably gonna wear like prom dresses or something.
Okay.
Oh, yikes! I shouldn't have
Costume
said
changes.
it. Costume changes
That's all
the
I'm
entire
saying.
time.
Yeah.
I'll just go
Like
behind
we're-
the little screen.
Like we're
Yeah.
hosting the Oscars,
Oh, boy.
just like that.
I hope not. I'll get punched.
So thank you everybody for tuning in live. If you are watching this on the replay and if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you all